designer, in a sense, should be as a more, because the artist, you know, you can buy it if you want it or you can't. You know, instead, if you do a product, it goes around, you know, for everybody to be interested in it if it's good. So that is something that is, you know, your responsibility, really.
So semantics applies to what the distribution of the object is going to be.
The destination more than the distribution, yes, definitely. But, you know, for instance, this applies just about to anything, really. It applies to design, it applies to architecture, it applies to any field, writing or anything, you know. It is well, it means that is appropriate, that is not happenstance, that is, it has its roots on what is meant to be.
Because I'm very concerned too, again, to the young student, to the young artist, how does he or she know what is appropriate?
Well, it's very easy to begin with. You know, I suggest all the time, start with the Webster, start with the dictionary, start with the encyclopedia if you have a doubt. Try to look really what it means. What it means, that particular word, a particular thing, what it is. And the more you dig into that, the closer you get to the solution of a problem. Because most of the time, things are done as a misinterpretation of what the real problem might be. You know. So the ability of one is to be able to diagnose, really, what is the real problem. And in order to do that, like a doctor, you have to know more about the subject.
And then, you know, I was asked to do also something else, like candlesticks and things, and then the Jewish Museum asked me to do the whole 5 pieces that they need. I didn't know anything about, but they told me, they gave me all the things. And other, you know, I did also other things, because sometimes I want to have it in my house, sometimes they get some question. And that was very well taken, so I did apparently the right thing, you know. And they help also explaining me and so on. But, you know, it's something that, you know, if you do a jewel in a sense, or jewel is not even a jewel, this one, you know, you do it, you are not that responsible, because this is something plus. You know, it's not something that somebody really needs. It has to go and buy it, like a chair or something, you know, something that, but I never try to do that, really.
It's an object of vanity.
Yeah.
So maybe semantic doesn't always apply to that, because
No, I think it applies in that case too. Mm-hmm. You know, it applies in everything, all the time.
It applies, but it has a different
parameters.
So when you design a logo, for instance, talk about the semantic approach to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, let's say, take an example, American Airlines, we design, you know. We made one word, half red and half blue. What could be more American? You know? So it says it right without adding anything. You know, we just brought it in very legible type, a new typeface at the time. I'm talking of 40 years ago. And so, and so on, you go that way, or you try to, on a logo, you try to be memorable most of the time, and legible, and appropriate. And appropriate, every time I mention the word appropriate, really means semantically correct, you know. So that is, if I would have done American Airlines with a fancy type, it wouldn't be appropriate for an airline which is so American, you say so.
Well, that's interesting. So why wouldn't it be appropriate for that airline? Because sometimes Alaska Airlines has scripted writing. Some airlines do have. How do we know? How do I know?
Well, different approaches, you know, different approaches to the profession. There is room for everybody, of course. There is room also for those things, you know. Not all the things that could be done perfectly.
But it's American. That's why. It's American. Yeah, so it's bold.
Yeah, it could have. I wouldn't have done it that way. Let's put it this way. I probably would have done something very different, something rooted with the Alaskan culture, perhaps. You know, I have no idea.
Well, they have that big picture of the Intuit on the
Yeah,
tail,
well,
so
that
maybe
is a
that's
good
what that
help,
is.
you know. That helps.
It seems to me sometimes looking at certain architecture and looking at certain logos, they're not getting it. No one taught them that because it's just whatever spontaneous idea they had, they try
Yeah,
and they put it
as a
in there.
matter of fact, if it would be so natural, we would not even talk about. We talk about just because one has to make an effort to reach these levels, you know. So it is a byproduct of a high level of professionalism. A lot of people can do things, but in a manner that is not professional, you know, that is more or less. Is really learning the rules of the game, really. That is, so that you can play that game, you can play that profession, you can play whatever you have to, you know, according to rules which are professional. Now, doctors, they have their own discipline, and they go by that, you know. Good lawyers will go by that, you know. He has his own discipline, which is the law, but everything, both a doctor, a designer, and an architect, and a lawyer, besides the discipline, they need also to interpret that. And interpretation becomes a very important thing. But interpretation without discipline, it doesn't stand up. And discipline without interpretation is very, very boring, in a sense. You know. But discipline in itself is very important.
Well, you quote doctors and you talk about lawyers who have, they work within a very strict code of ethics. They take an oath when they take their job. Architects.
And then a printed thing.
Right.
A law.
Architects have a code of ethics. But as I look at architecture and I look at a lot of art forms, it seems to me that a lot of that discipline has disappeared over time with a lot of them, especially as they struggle to be more mainstream, as they struggle to be more commercial. They're willing to do almost anything. Whatever's popular, they'll do. But we can remind ourselves that some of the greatest painters in history, because they need to sell their art, the Impressionists just became Impressionists because they could sell their art. So...
But again, they had a particular kind of discipline of their own. Think of Seurat, for instance, the discipline he had of controlling the dots in such a way that the light will be generated. But that is art, however. Art has its own different canons, you know, of disciplines, you know, and throughout, every great artist has a certain amount of discipline, even if it doesn't become very apparent, you know. Even Picasso. He sets his own discipline. He sets his own discipline, in a sense. You know. Discipline doesn't mean going straight. Discipline means being coherent. That being consistent. That is discipline. You know, most of the time people think that discipline is to be in line. You know, that kind of a thing, you know, and be square, you know, so on and so forth. Has nothing to do with that. Discipline could be completely curvilinear, you know. Arp, you know, as an artist, was extremely disciplined in his completely free form, as Mondrian was with his, you know, straight crosses, and so on and so forth. Discipline is just rigorousness and to yourself, to what you set up, you know, the boundaries that you set up. Discipline means to move within a certain boundaries that you have assumed for that particular work, you know. Then that could be extended to the entire attitude that you have in life, you know, and that can extend throughout, you know. But discipline is really consistency.
Because young artists, of course, would find discipline restrictive. They want to be spontaneous.
Yes, exactly. And I think they should try, you know, nobody stops them, because if they are young and so on, depending who is teaching them or in which ambient they live, you know, what is their culture and all these kind of things. But they, you know, they should try things. I don't say that they shouldn't try them, but they also have to understand at a certain point in life, perhaps, that you need to have a direction. You need to have something that you do not just because you want to do something different, but because you believe in it. If you are an artist or if you are a designer, you do the right thing that is needed, that is something that can be of use for a lot of people, that will be something new, that that you do something for the greening of the thing or whatever, and not just to show that you are great.
Because again, as I said before, consistency is on anything. Anything could be consistent or inconsistent. And things which are bad most of the time is because they are inconsistent. There's one piece of a language in one area, another piece of a language in another area. It's different languages put together. It's no consistency of a concept.